And welcome back to Open Your Eyes. We're moving now into our third and final segment for the morning. Now this one is all about the Belize National Forensic Science Service. You might be wondering what that is. We've got the pros in to tell us all about what it is. As a matter of fact, in with us we've got the Executive Director of the Belize National Forensic Science Service. That's none other than my brother from another mother, Gian. He's in with us. Then we've got the Dean of the Faculty of Arts, Science and Technology at Galen University, Sherry Gibbs. We also have DNA expert consultant Jillian Conte, and we've got Kimberlee Moran, who's the Associate Teaching Professor and Director of Forensic at Rutgers.
Good morning,
guys,
yes.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
It's nice to have you in. One of the things that I mentioned to Paul this morning is forensics and how it's a way forward. It propels us forward. It provides justice, and it provides so many other things that is really necessary for our country. But we hear about the National Forensic Science Services, and a lot of people might not know what we're talking about when it comes to that. And the biggest thing is the buy-in. Gian, what is this department about? The Belize National Forensic Science Services. Talk to us about that.
Thank you. And again, thank you for having us. Good morning to everyone and to our staff all across Belize. So the NFSS is a department under Ministry of Home Affairs. It's staffed by civilian staff. Right now we have approximately 55 staff.
Wow.
We have some vacancies. Full capacity, we have up to 68 personnel. Distributed across 3 units. The Medical Examiner's Office, which is one of the units that we're working closely with our visiting team. That's the focus of the conversation this morning. We also have the Scenes of Crime unit. We have 34 crime scene technicians distributed across Belize. And we have the Forensic Laboratory. We have about over a dozen analysts and forensic practitioners working at the Forensic Lab across 4 sections: seized drugs, toxicology, firearms, and serology.
Wow.
And so the focus of today's conversation is to look at how the NFSS has established a partnership with visiting academics through what we call the Rutgers Forensic Consortium, because it really started with Kimberlee at Rutgers University, and then she organized a team of some of her colleagues from the USA to come down and work specifically on a couple projects that we asked them to focus on.
Yeah.
And locally, on the local front, we have partnered closely with Galen University on this program, because Galen has a strong anthropology program, and one of our experts, a forensic anthropologist that works with us at NFSS, Belizean, he also lectures a course at Galen, forensic anthropology. So that it made perfect sense to partner with Galen as well as the visiting academics on this particular project. I'll just summarize quickly what the project is, and then my colleagues will explain further. So we're focusing on 2 main fronts: forensic anthropology in the identification or examination and identification of skeletal remains.
Okay.
So we have in our inventory at forensics archived skeletal remains. These are our human remains, spanning over the past couple of decades.
Wow.
Right, so these are quote-unquote cold cases, which may or may not have a criminal element.
Yeah.
But just from the very fact that we have unidentified people, individuals, we have to ensure that we have ethical stewardship of their remains and do as much as we can, more so now than we did in the past, to try to identify them. They have a right to be identified. Their relatives, next of kin, also have a right to receive the remains and lay them to rest.
So these remains are not forgotten about,
No.
per se, or put in the back of a storage room somewhere?
Well, from the get-go, from when they were recovered, and the oldest one is from 1998, I believe.
Wow.
They were packaged and put in a container. So we're revisiting these skeletal remains, and this is not uncommon. This happens in several other jurisdictions, and we usually partner with academic institutions to go through the forensic anthropology work to do bar profiles, and eventually would lead towards a public outreach campaign to get DNA samples from suspected relatives to try to bring closure to these cases.
So Kimberlee, right to mention here, which he did pointed you out in terms of how the entire conversation got started. Why Belize?
So I'm very interested in how forensic science is structured and administered in lots of different countries. And I have a lot of experience working in Europe and in Africa, a little bit in South America. And I have, various alerts set up on my email for, interesting news stories related to forensic science.
Wow.
And I came across a news story about additional partnerships between the U.S. Embassy and the Belizean National Forensic Science Service, and that the American Embassy was going to be providing additional support. And they've already provided a lot of support in terms of various donations, bringing in consultants and so forth. And so I reached out to Gian. He had also hosted the 3rd annual Forensic Science Symposium that brought together a lot of folks. Yeah, I'm sure you guys have talked about that before.
We have.
And that came across my news desk as well, and it had his email address. So I reached out, and it just turned out that it was the right time and the right place, and we had the right project available, and then it just snowballed from there.
Wow. And let's get to Galen University. Like Gian mentioned, there is a very vibrant program going on there. Talk to us about that, and how I'd like to go to where for the fact that people are actually able to get enrolled. But let's talk about the program that you guys have at Galen.
Sure thing. We have, and hi, morning. Thanks for having us on. We have an anthropology program that has an element that focuses on biological anthropology, and so Kimberlee and her team came in yesterday to talk to that first day, the class, explaining to them what it is that they're doing here, but the areas within biological anthropology. And so one of these classes is forensic anthropology. What we did when we created that course early on, we paired it with an osteoarchaeology class, which takes osteology, so understanding and studying the human skeleton, and applying it to an archaeological context, which you can imagine here is, a perfect class to take if you're interested in archaeology here, exhuming skeletal remains and being able to analyze them and understand the information and how we can apply that. We can take that skill set that you're learning and apply it to a forensic setting.
Yeah.
And so it made sense to pair it with a forensic anthropology class. And when we developed that class, it was in conjunction with a forensic anthropologist at the University of Indianapolis. And so he helped, the two of us, we worked and developed that course. He came down the first time to co-teach it. And from there, it really just took off. Dr. Blanco, who works at the Forensic Service, found out about it and was really interested in it, and took the class. And now he is a forensic anthropologist. And so he teaches that class now, which is really fantastic. And the students are really afforded some wonderful opportunities with that. So this opportunity has been there for anybody who's really interested in anthropology and what you can do with it. So it's a little bit different from going the archaeology or the cultural anthropology route. You can get into this biological and forensic aspect of it. And it also pairs well too with our criminal justice program. And so we're looking at doing a little bit of revamping in that program to allow students to venture into these areas as well, to specialize in these areas, because as I think Gian has or will mention that there's more and more opportunities, and that department is really going to grow, and it needs to, and we've recognized that there is a need for this area, and so we're ready and willing to assist where we can with that sort of training and educating.
I wanted to go back to Mr. Gian. You were sharing one aspect of the partnership. If you would continue to expound on the other aspects and what is being asked of the partnership.
Okay. Well, before I continue on, I just want to mention that we have 9 visiting experts this week, but Kimberlee and Jillian are also in the capacity of Fulbright specialists. So we reach out to the U.S. Embassy for support on this project. There's a Fulbright specialist program under the U.S. Department of State that supports visits like this, visiting academics, visiting specialists that come to our country and assist in capacity building and technical assistance. And so we basically separated into 2 projects, although they're very closely related. The other half is forensic biology. We eventually want to do in-country DNA analysis at the NFSS. A lot of requirements go into that, not only training, equipment, infrastructure, which is one of the biggest limitations right now, but also some of the foundational work in terms of legislation, passage of a specific DNA Act, which we don't have in Belize, also a population database to be able to do statistical calculations and likelihood ratios so that you can interpret the DNA profiles more reliably. And so to do that, you need to have a well-established study of the population in terms of the genetics, or what we call the allele frequencies, and that's where Jillian comes in to help us design a more up-to-date study. One was done almost 10 years ago. We need to update that, widen out the sample size, and so that's where Jillian, her specific role comes in.
So let's talk about who is it that we're engaging in this capacity building? Are we engaging, is it that we're engaging the students at the university, staff members from NFSS, and what's the model like in terms of the way the courses are set out and outlined over the course of the next few weeks?
Okay, well, for this visit, it's mainly my staff. We're doing actually hands-on work with my personnel. We also have investigators from police that are there in terms of looking at the skeletal remains.
Yes.
But in terms of the capacity building, the sessions and more one-on-one, it's with my personnel. With Galen, there's opportunities for students to just, well, they had some guest lectures yesterday, and they'll speak more about that, for them to come and sit in on the trainings, but the trainings are focused on the forensic practitioners in Belize.
So, Jillian, you're not out of the woods. Jillian, I'm looking here, DNA expert consultant, and we spoke about the criminal justice, and because there's so many things here in this country that have just been swept under the rug, or maybe we don't have the know-it-how or the wherewithal to actually get it done. Then it comes down to DNA, which is one of the most important ways of how you could get justice. Let's talk about DNA and your part in this entire project.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, DNA is still very much looked at as the gold standard throughout the world for evidence testing.
Yeah.
It's scientifically based. We can apply statistics, which gives a weight to the evidence.
Yeah.
So it goes a long way in court, and we've seen it all on the television shows. So we know that it is going to, tell us the answer at the end of the day. So my role is, Gian brought this up, that they want to bring DNA testing in country, and that is a few years down the road, but there are things that are important that we're doing now to get there, some stepping stones that we have to do. So my role here is to work with Gian and his team at the lab in the forensic biology unit, looking at designing a study that we call a population genetics study. So looking at the DNA of a representative sample of Belizeans. And from that, we can get information about how frequently we see that genetic information in the Belizean population.
Yeah.
And that's going to be different than the US population and the Mexican population. We want to make sure that we're getting this information, this data, specifically from the Belize population. That way we could begin to use those numbers, like Gian said, to do calculations, such as the likelihood ratio, when in-country DNA testing starts taking place. This will make sure that a Belizean is represented properly in the statistics, and that all races that are identified in the Belizean population are represented in that database.
Excellent.
That's my role.
Are we, and thank you for an overview of what you do. Are we hoping that through this visit we'll be able to identify some of these skeletal remains that are archived at this time? Because I look at the schedule and it seems that as if a number of days and a large amount of time is being committed towards examining these remains.
Point blank, no. Because to positively identify some of these skeletal remains, especially some of the ones that have been there for a long period of time, exposed to the elements, it might be some time before we can extract DNA profiles and have the control sample to compare it to. But during this visit, we need to start the process of updating the bar profiles that we have for them, so we can narrow down from police missing person databases who are potential suspected relatives. So the next step would be to do a public outreach campaign for individuals who had a missing person during XYZ time period to come forward. So, but that can't happen without the work that we're doing this week. And we only have one forensic anthropologist on staff at the NFSS. He's also a medical examiner. His days are booked doing post-mortem examinations on recent cases. So having 9 extra pair of hands to assist and to provide, to lend tools, to offer technical support, to offer resources, both physical and virtual, ongoing consultation informally, and follow-up visits, right? It will assist him to devote time, or assist the department to ensure that we devote necessary resources
Yes,
to make
towards that.
these unidentified remains a priority and to keep them as a priority going forward.
So Ms. Moran, what are we doing in these sessions? What are we teaching in terms of the examination process? Talk a bit about
Sure. So last week we did a little bit of training for the crime scene technicians on how to recover human remains, both buried remains and surface remains. First of all, I just have to say that there are amazing things happening in Belize. Like, the National Forensic Science Service is the best kept secret. They are doing wonderful things.
Yeah.
I think we in the United States have a lot to learn with some of the things that are happening here in Belize. So I am so impressed by the professionalism of the
Yeah.
crime scene technicians that we have in this country. So they are, so engaged and ready to learn and develop new skills. They already have an excellent manual of how they operate at crime scenes. So we've done some training with them. We've done some training of the medical examiner's office staff, so how to take the proper photography of the human remains, how to do the paperwork, what measurements need to be taken,
Yeah.
how to inventory the remains. So right now, as we speak, our team is active in the lab, going through the remains and doing the necessary steps and training the staff at the same time. We're going to be doing additional training looking at forensic entomology, insects, and how insects can be used as evidence. So that's actually happening tomorrow. And we're going to be doing, again, some more crime scene photography training, medical legal death investigations. So right now we have crime scene technicians, we don't have death investigators. And one of the things that Gian is trying to do is set up a specialized unit to investigate all deaths, to respond to all death scenes.
Yeah.
So we're going to be giving them some training there as well. So a lot of stuff. There's a lot of moving parts. When you have 9 people, you have different people in different places doing different things, but it's been really exciting.
I see that you brought what
Yes.
appears to be
A human skull.
Yeah. So it's not a real human skull.
okay, great.
Because that would not be ethical to put a real human skull on television. So this is a plastic model, but I brought it today to show a little bit of what we're actually doing in the laboratory and how we establish what Gian has mentioned before, the biological profile.
Okay.
So the biological profile is all the information that we can understand about this individual just using markers on the bone.
Okay.
And we do a combination of non-metric, just looking at features, and metric, where we actually take measurements of different aspects of the skull. So one of the things of the biological profile is we want to determine if this individual is male or female, biologically male or
How
female.
do we do that?
Oh, well, there's lots of things on the skull that we can look at. So the first feature I want to point out is this kind of lump here. So if you feel behind your ear, you'll find that there's a kind of a bony area. We call this the mastoid process.
Yes.
So men have kind of a larger bony bump and women not so much. And that's kind of the theme through all these is men are kind of big and lumpy and women aren't so much.
Thank you.
So the next feature we want to look at is the area here at the eyebrows. So
Okay.
again, men have lumpy eyebrows.
Oh, yeah, I know.
And women, not so much. We have
Okay.
smooth foreheads.
Okay.
Another feature is here at the back of the skull. So if you kind of feel down the back of your head, and you'll feel
Okay.
there's, again, another lump. Men have a large lump, and women not so much. This is actually where your muscles attach. So if you move your head up and down, you can feel your
You'll
neck
feel that,
muscles.
yeah.
Yep, they attach at this area here.
But is there like a certain measurement that you would say, okay, yes, this is a male, yes, this is a female?
Right. So there are so many measurements that we do all around the skull. Lots of different points here. You'll notice, even though this is a plastic model, it has these kind of squiggly lines. These are areas where the different plates of the skull come together, and so we do a lot of measurements at certain reference points. We measure things like, how large the eye sockets are, and we use all these measurements together to kind of come up again with a statistic. What is the likelihood that this is male versus female? Another feature that we look at is the jaw. So men have square jaws. Women tend to have kind of pointy, because we're thinking all the time, right?
Oh my gosh.
So there's lots of features on the skull to help us determine the sex of the individual. So that's the first aspect of the biological profile.
What I'm seeing there,
What do
that's
you
a male,
guess?
that's a male.
Well,
I was going to
think
say
this
it's a
is pretty
female.
generic because it is a
Yeah.
plastic model. It's kind of hard. The next thing that we want to determine is the age when the person died.
Okay.
And one of the features that are very useful are the teeth. So I have here just a bottom jaw. And so our teeth fall out and come in
Yeah.
at pretty predictable ages. So
Yeah.
do you guys remember when you lost your first tooth? How old were you?
Oh, wow.
6, 7.
Yeah,
around 7 years old.
that's about right. And then do you remember what was the first tooth that you lost?
You normally lose
The
these
front
teeth already,
ones,
yeah, the
right?
front teeth,
Right.
yeah.
So we have really good charts of the different ages that teeth are developing. They actually develop inside your jaw, and a process that we call eruption. Very much like a volcano. The
Yeah.
teeth actually come up and out of the jaw. So we can use x-rays to see what teeth are forming inside the jaw, which ones have erupted. We can also look at how worn down the teeth are as well. Your teeth are not designed to last forever. They do wear out. And so we can look from front to back, that process of wearing to determine the age at death. So we also measure the long bones, the arms and legs, to determine how tall the person was. And we also use features of the skull to determine kind of just general kind of ethnic groups. So that's the biological profile. One thing that's really important, though, is to also look for signs of trauma, disease, medical intervention. Did someone break their arm when they were alive and it's now re-healed? We can see that. So we're basically putting together people's medical histories as well. And this is why it's so important for the public, if they have individuals that went missing, to come forward, because it's through that information, getting information from loved ones, that we're able to marry that up with the science, the biological profile,
Yeah.
to hopefully identify folks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now this is
That's a lot.
this is extensive, but at the same time very interesting. Which brings me to ask Gian again. Now, in terms of equipment for such thing, I mean, we're just starting out, but do we have these things?
We have basic, and following this visit, we have some more. That's one of the support that's coming from the team. And well, the stuff that we're talking about in terms of bar profiles, it's not advanced equipment that you need. The DNA aspect, yes, we don't have in country, so that's why we outsource our DNA samples to Oklahoma. But yeah, we do need to focus more now on the human resources, because like I said, we only have one forensic anthropologist. And the medical examiner's office is actually the smallest unit of the NFSS. There's only 5 staff. Actually, just next week, we're hiring 2 more staff, 2 more personnel. But I mean, it takes at least a year to train up somebody to have them become competent to take on casework.
Yeah.
So focusing more on the human resources, while the government and the ministry, we focus on getting new infrastructure. We're also focusing on the training right now.
There are also development for the project team that's going on. There's an agenda that started with the introductory meeting with the project team lead at NFSS. I got it corrected there.
You got it.
So what is the remaining part of this agenda?
Okay, so as Kimberlee said, as we speak, the bone team are continuing examination of remains. We have an exit meeting this Friday with the ministry, just to report out on what was accomplished. However, Jillian will be with us for an additional week.
Yeah.
Like I said, Kimberlee and Jillian are both Fulbright specialists. They came for 14 days each. They've overlapped for this week. But next week, Jillian will be here focusing one-on-one with our forensic serology supervisor, and we're looking at that section. Just trying to streamline some of the workflows, getting some of the foundational conversations and presentations done for the population study that we mentioned. But this, for all of us, is the first visit of several. We hope to have this ongoing support, especially with Galen, for visiting academics to come in and not only help NFSS, but also help Galen, tailor their programs so that we have a reliable source of future professionals in forensic science.
So what has been the takeaway for you following these lectures at the university as you envision the future for the university in this field?
This has been really, really exciting and something that I'd been hoping to see for quite some time. And so it's really been fantastic to see Gian and Dr. Blanco really take this on and understand the importance of forensic anthropology. It's been an interest of mine for quite some time, and so being able to see this being developed, having the students be exposed to these specialists coming down to see that this really is something. It's not just something that we've talked about in class, and it's one of those people do it out there, but to see these specialists, get to know them, hear about what it is that they're doing, and hopefully inspire. And I think too, just from the show, if anybody's out there listening, can be inspired by this. And I think sometimes some students or young people may feel limited to what's available for them here. and knowing that maybe it's just not possible to go outside, but that this is happening here.
Yeah.
And so, you know, they could come to Galen and learn about this and get these opportunities and then decide, yeah, now I'm going to go on.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm going to do, and know that they've been able to build these connections and that there is a possibility for them here, so that we're not losing people going and staying abroad, but that this is happening here.
Well, you know what, I think it's very progressive for the fact that there is an introductory, at least for it, and you know, then you could move on to higher things from there. But Jill, what will have been the expectations or the learnings from those who are actually now in this project? From whence till you leave?
For me, my expectations have already been exceeded about what I have learned. I feel like I'm learning more than I'm giving learning to those in Belize, and again, it's because of the knowledge that exists in the personnel in the NFSS. So we all have small different goals that we want to accomplish. One of my big ones before I leave will be to have a proposal in hand for Gian to take the next steps towards getting in-country DNA testing, which will be setting about to do a population genetics study. Kimberlee will be delivering with the bone team the identification or the bioprofiles of the missing skeletons that they're working on.
Yeah.
And I think yesterday we had a lunch with the Galen University faculty, and we have some action items from there about research collaborations and ways that we can continue, even when we're home in the States, engaging with the students and the Galen University faculty. And then, of course, interacting and continuing to interact with Gian and his team when we leave, and preparing for our next visits, and then what are our next tasks that we're going to achieve, and just keep coming down here and keep stepping forward and learning from all of you and taking a lot back with us.
And just one thing to add real quick. So the 9 members of the team, none of them knew each other prior to this trip.
Kidding?
I knew all of them, but they didn't know each other.
They didn't know each other.
So they've now formed all sorts of partnerships between themselves that are going to continue when they go back to the United States. So it's been really exciting, yeah.
Awesome.
That's
Well,
the-
go ahead.
that reminds me, just to highlight what, because they're not here today, they're in the lab with Dr. Blanco. Some of the women have come together, not knowing each other, and created a tool for creating the bioprofile of bones. And they worked on this before we came into Belize, and now they're actually getting to use that tool in a real life fieldwork scenario. And they're really pushing it to the limits, identifying how to hone in on that and make it as good as possible. And that's something that will be publishable when we leave here as a great resource for other forensic anthropologists. So there's a lot of small things that we didn't expect to come out of this week that are just coming out of this week.
All right. Well, we want to thank you all for joining us this morning. It was a great conversation, very insightful. Now we know a lot more about the NFSS and their partnership with you guys and all that you all are doing to bring justice, the justice that Belizeans across the country, the closure that families across the country are asking for. So with that, we'll take another break and we'll be right back to wrap up.